That's not good. Test 1 2 1 2.
Why don't you sing your favorite Luton Town song?
Da 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 da. Happy.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. Soccer 90 is your source for all your FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club gear. Right now in the store on the website, the limited edition Pepi El Tren scarves are in stock at this moment. Go get one. And don't forget, you Third Degree listeners get 25% off your purchase when you use the code, say it with me now, Third Degree, at checkout at soccer90.com. Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, it is me, Peter, and from high atop his penthouse luxury apartment in downtown Addison, or Richardson, Texas. Forgot, sorry, you'd moved. It is our friend, Dan Crook.
Hi, Peter. It's only the 4th floor. It's not very high up, but it is the top floor.
Is it the 4th floor
So
of a
technically
4-story building?
It is.
Then it's the penthouse in downtown Richardson. Play radio.
Okay, we'll go with that then.
That's right. Dan Crook lives in a penthouse. Very posh. Very, very posh. And coming to us live from a cheap motel room somewhere in West Texas, potentially even over the border in Juarez or somewhere in New Mexico or El Paso, with a pretty shitty internet connection. So excuse his audio quality. It's your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor and founder of thirddegree.net, the amazing Buzz Carrick. Earth to Buzz. Come in, Buzz.
Hello, Peter. I'm actually in El Paso. I had to come here because Pepi's going to be sold soon, and I wanted to have a moment of Pepi solitude, and here in El Paso. So,
Okay.
You made the Pepi pilgrimage? Wow.
He made
Yeah,
the Pepi,
Pepi.
hashtag Pepi pilgrimage.
Yep,
Are you
yeah.
going to go visit the house his dad built?
yeah, how's his dad built? I'm going to go look up the field he played youth soccer on. I'm going to go check out FC Dallas El Paso. Yeah, doing the whole thing.
If I don't soon, by soon I mean by the end of tomorrow, get a picture of you standing in front of the house his dad built with your FC Dallas Curious t-shirt on, I'm going to be really, really mad at you, Buzz Carrick.
Yeah, well, prepare to be mad because I didn't bring that shirt. But yeah, sorry. I got my El Trent shirt though.
Well,
Maybe
of
I'll
course
that
you
one.
do. You put all your third degree crap on so somebody will recognize you and say something to you. Lord. All right.
Lord.
Well, since the Pepi pilgrimage is the topic of the moment, and we'll talk about the game last night and everything else. I don't even know why we want to talk about that stupid effing game last night, but we will. I do think the hottest and most interesting topic going on right now is the almost universally agreed to likelihood that come by the end of January 2022, Pepi will no longer be a part of FC Dallas and playing for some sort of European club of some size. And the amount of which we don't know, but everybody loves to take a guess and throw out their opinions on it. So Pepi talk we will start with. I'm going to ask this question. I've asked it at a couple different places, but I'm interested, and there is no wrong answer, but I am interested, based on this club and this story and all of the back and forth on this, why do fans care how much ultimately Ricardo Pepi ends up getting sold for? Buzz?
Well, I'm going to suggest it's because, in a way, you can sort of keep score in a sense of like how your club's doing by the quote unquote value of the players it produces and what they sell for. And if you're going to lose those players anyway, you want to see the club get as much money as possible. Now, specifically, will the Hunts use that money in a positive way and rebuild the team? I can't give you that part, obviously, but I think people still want to feel like if we're going to lose a guy this good, we better get as much as possible in return to make themselves feel better about losing him. You know, so that's why I think they care.
Dan, is it bragging rights or something more than that?
Bragging rights, accountability, bit of everything, really. You know, fans kind of like Buzz were losing to. I mean, remember Dan Hunt talking about, oh yeah, Olympiacos bid like 3.5, and we turned them down, and then suddenly he was forced to take like 500,000 more than that. Only 500,000 more when he was talking about 10 million. It's also one of those curiosities, just the soccer is. What does FC Dallas have to spend on the team next year? It's in part going to be based around whatever they make off Pepi and Andre's guy. That's Andre's guy's war chest. That's the chance of playoffs. That's how close you can get to MLS Cup before falling away, because that's what this team does.
All right, so I'm going to ask this question: if Pepi is sold for 10 million or 15 million, or in some universe he actually ends up selling for 20 million, from those three different amounts, do you think the 2022 FC Dallas roster actually looks any different?
No, because of the people who would be in charge of that money. Also, you're talking about, are they going to get paid an upfront fee, which, let's be honest, isn't the most common thing these days. Or is it going to be a structured plan? Or is it going to be like Reggie, where it's promised down the line and then it just never shows up? So there's as much to that as there is to just how much the team agrees to.
Buzz, you got any insight on that?
I think that there's going to be more turnover than people might expect when a team is as bad as this one is, despite the fact that they sat in the press conference and said it's a player or two away. Any given year, you might have 5-6 guys, and I think when a team finishes where this one does, it'll be higher. So I think you're going to have between 5 to 10 people turn over. It depends on if they get enough money for Pepi, how much of it will they be willing to use to clean out the roster, because you have a bunch of dudes that are under contract that get paid a relatively large amount of money. So the Hunt's promised to keep the money in the team. Maybe some addition by subtraction money, unfortunately, as bad as that may seem. And then, you're going to have to replace some bodies. There's definitely going to be some level of turnover, and it might be, depending on what coach gets hired, it could be more than we anticipate, actually.
More than we anticipate in terms of turnover?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on what coach comes in, that coach might want to turn over large portions of the roster, or he might agree with Andre that, we're really, really close, just 1 or 2 players away. I think they're crazy that they think they're just 1 or 2 players away. But you might say you're 1 or 2 high-end players away, but the roster itself needs an adjustment of about 10 players.
Yes, it does. After watching yet another episode of that last night, it's most certainly is in desperate need of a full flush. Even of players who I'm afraid I love dearly. All right, so my next question related to that then, guys, is based on, there's been some interesting reporting from various and different sources. One guy went so far as claiming, and then kind of somewhat killed his own lead by saying different things in the body of the story from, I think, Goal 90. I can't remember that guy's name. By claiming that Ricardo had actually turned in a transfer request form, which seemed very formal to me. And I actually asked you guys if that had ever happened in the history of this club, because, when I think of Diaz or Kellen or any number of guys that have left the club, it was the impression you get was they walked into the coach's office or Dan's office and said, "Hey, can I please go?" Turning in a transfer request to me sounds like printing out a form, having your agent fill it out, sign it, and give it legally, like a legal document kind of thing. And I'm really suspect that's really happened in this situation with Ricardo Pepi.
Yeah, my impression is based on the initial reporting that you're talking about was, if you remember and I don't remember who it is either, my apologies. He said, Pepi's turned in a transfer request, and then he said, asked for confirmation from the agent. Well, that means he didn't get it from the agent. That means somebody was like, "Dude, I hear Pepi asked to leave," and he worded that as put in transfer request. Well, I'm very certain that Pepi's people have told FC Dallas, "We really want to leave now." That's not the same thing as, quote, putting in a transfer request, as you say. And the fact that no one's ever confirmed that he has, quote, put in a transfer request means to me that he certainly has not. He's told them that he wants to go. Everyone assumes he's leaving. FC Dallas said they would like to keep him for a year. But to me, that was just bargaining. That's what you do when you're in the middle of discussions with somebody and you want to put out your card that, by the way, we've got him under contract. We don't have to do this. You want that card out there. And so, of course, there's an immediate response where the Pepi's team leaks out of like, oh, we definitely want to go, So this is typical bargaining that happens, and it's par for the course. And nothing is different this week than it was a week ago in terms of his desire to leave and or the club's desire to sell him.
So Dan, real quick, I want to set this question up because I've watched soccer for what feels like a million years, and I've heard the phrase turned in a transfer request more times than I can count. But I have to admit, I don't honestly understand what that means. I mean, is that a formal handing of a form or an email or some sort of legal document exchange that confirms that somebody actually is asking to leave, or is that just a very formal way of saying somebody asked to go verbally?
I mean, it's kind of similar to quitting a job, right? You can say, "Hey, I quit," but you've still got you've still got to kind of give a written resignation, or do something that's there and verifiable. I mean, it kind of seems a little bit odd reporting. No, he probably didn't formally, request a transfer in that way. I think in the most recent CBA they permitted it, but normally there's loyalty payments that are tied to this, that if you get sold and you didn't actually request a transfer, you get a portion of that back. So no, after signing a contract that was probably incentivized to sell anyway, he's not just going to go, money, I'm going to throw that away.
Yeah, so I guess some of this conversation is about, Buzz, where do you think all of this really is? Everybody, I mean, is the general agreement that Pepi wants to go and Pepi has told them, or is Pepi's, agency or family or dad or whatever told them, hey, we want you to sell him in January? Do we have any real sense as to where this is?
Yeah, I would think we have a very real sense of where it is. You can use enough of the noise that's in the media, combining with what just anyone would know about the logic of the situation. And it comes down to the idea that if you sell a player of Pepi's caliber to a large foreign club that's at a clearly higher level than FC Dallas would be, that's the idea. The amount of money they pay for them is going to indicate, for a player like Pepi, is going to indicate how much you're going to have to pay the player. So if you pay for between $10 to $20 million, hypothetically, whichever end of the scale you think Pepi belongs on, you have to then pay him accordingly. So you're talking about a kid who's going from this year on a prorated, was it 275, Dan, prorated?
Yep.
That he's on. You're talking about a kid going from that to it's going to be like Mauro Diaz. He's going to at least triple that and be on a mill, maybe even. I mean, who knows what it's going to be, but it's going to have a relative value to his age and the productivity and the amount you're paying for him. So you can't. It's then impossible, really, as an organization, to turn to a kid and go, "No, you have to stay," because that's number one. It's poor business because it ruins your reputation as a club that develops and moves people on to Europe. Two, it's sort of at least disingenuous, if not outright betrayal, because I'm sure Pepi signed this current deal with the understanding that we're going to sell you, right? And so when you have this kind of explosive talent, and when the teams come sniffing around, they're sniffing around, yeah, absolutely, you go now. And again, the reason the Hunts say things like, and the Hunt organization, it could be Andre, say things like, "Oh, we would like to keep him through the World Cup," and why they even leak this idea they want to keep him to the World Cup is because they want to empower their side of the table to get more money. They don't really think that. They really think that they better do it now before he gets hurt. The club has already, I can 100% tell you, begun looking for a replacement for Pepi. Whether it's just scouting, whether actually talking to people, I don't know that part. But at the very least, they're already looking. They know this is happening, and they know it's very, very likely that it's going to be happening this winter.
Okay, and because we as even, what in the world is going on?
I have no idea. Something in my hotel is going very loud and very noisy, and I don't know what it is.
That's some odd.
Ringing some cowbells outside.
Are you at a place that rents hourly or something, Buzz?
It's actually an Embassy Suites, actually.
Oh, okay.
So that's a yes or a no?
Oh, no, it's a no. That's a no. My wife is in the other room, fellas. Come on.
It's an embassy suite spelled SWEETS
Yeah, with a Z.
with a Z.
Sweets. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's interesting because now I guess because we've all waffled on this timing issue, and I think, well, I don't want to claim, I don't want to take too much claim, but I do feel like the odds of him not going in January seem smaller and smaller as every day goes by.
Yeah, I mean the odds of him not going. I mean, look, there is always a chance if nobody comes in with what the Hunts value, and they may hold their line, and we don't know what that number is. They may hold their line. They may hold their line for a sell-on percentage, but Pepi's people are going to put pressure, and there's enough people that have now been acknowledged and reported as being interested in him. Somebody of these 20 clubs we've heard of, and then for every one you hear, there's 5 that you didn't hear. Mm-hmm. Someone in that group is going to come in with enough money to get this done. I assume the question will just be, can we get enough of, can we, being the Hunts, this is their mentality, can we get enough of the sell-on that we want, we assume, because that's how the Hunts work, to make it worth our while to actually do the deal. So that's going to be the holding spot and the sticking spot. I can't imagine they'll not do it because there's a diminishing return too. There is the idea, of course, great, that he plays better next year and increases his value. Yes, there's also the risk of injury, right? If something were to go wrong, then all of a sudden you get nothing. So there's a balance there. And the other part is that if you sell him next summer leading into the World Cup, then you get this typical end of season train wreck FC Dallas that happens every time they sell one of these MVP type level players in mid-season, and you ruin the season again. The club's better off just doing it now.
From that, Dan, I'm going to ask you this question. Out of all of the clubs you've heard mentioned that have called the Frisco offices and inquired about Ricardo Pepi, which is the most ridiculous?
Liverpool seems a little bit ridiculous. It's just not their nature.
I completely agree with you. That one actually made me almost spit out my iced tea when I saw that, laughing because it was so stupid. But Dan, my next question is, which one is your favorite? And I guess that could have different meanings, but which one's your favorite?
Oh, tough. I think I like the Wolfsburg link. I think they're in a pretty good place. They've got I can't remember his first name. Weghorst, kind of an aging striker. Got Lucas Nimicia. The kid. He's an English-German kid from Man City. Plays as a striker or a right winger. I think Pepi, might have a chance of pushing him out wide. I'm going to actually look up how you say his name.
Dan sounded like he had just taken a giant sip of super hot English tea and was struggling with that.
No, there wasn't enough cousin for that.
Okay.
All English people have burnt their mouth on tea, obviously. No, I think that'd be a cool link. And then just personally, Wolfsburg is actually a twin town with Luton, so it'd be kind of a cool link. And their jerseys are always cool.
Yeah, the reason why I asked this question circles back to the original question about why fans care about how much he'll end up getting sold for. Because, and I'm going to come and ask you this same question in a second, Buzz, but the reason why I'm curious about all of this is that knowing that it's unlikely that whatever amount of money Pepi gets sold for is going to end up meaning a dollar-for-dollar investment in the roster in terms of a player or multiple really kick-ass players, and maybe more for helping pay things related to the overhead of the club. You can argue whether that's the right thing or wrong thing to do. Should we all not really be just hoping for the good of Ricardo Pepi, who's been a good, loyal servant, as even for a shorter period of time he's been here, ends up in the best situation that fosters his professional growth? Isn't that what we really should be rooting for, not how much he gets sold for?
Oh, most definitely. The comfort fit, the best opportunity to develop, the best opportunity to excel is far more important for any player. But any player that comes to FC Dallas, that's what I want for them. Sometimes there's been guys who have made decisions that I've thought to myself, boy, that doesn't feel like a good spot for me. Breck Shea would be a great example of that. Same with Kenny Cooper when he went to 1860. You got to go to a place where it's key, I think, that the coach of the first team, not just the TD and the owner that want you, but the coach of the first team has to want you, because if he doesn't want you and they just stick him on the squad, then you're not going to play. So, assuming that is you're at a place that you're not getting loaned out. Like
Right.
if he were to go to Liverpool, obviously they would not. He wouldn't play with Liverpool. They would loan him to, Hartwick or whatever. I just made up a team. I don't know. Like it's a real team. Richmond. They would loan him to Richmond AFC. So he can play in the second division.
You just named a roundabout.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll come back to you and ask you the question I asked Dan. Which of the clubs that you have heard, or is there one that you really are hoping he ends up going to?
Well, I want to do the most absurd one first, and that was Inter Milan. Inter Milan is like the team in Italy that I like the most, and for me that would be fun. But I think that would be a horrible place for him to land. That's not a club that's known for developing, as far as I know, anybody really. But the place I would most like him to go is actually Dortmund, for two reasons. The number one reason is that they have a phenomenal track record of developing talent, and they're particularly good at spotting talent with superstar potential that they get for what for them is a bargain of, say, 15 to $20 million, and then pushing it into the first team and turning it into superstars and then selling it for $100 million. They do that quite frequently, relatively speaking. And then second, they also have had a phenomenal track record with Americans specifically of late, with both Pulisic and Reyna. Mm-hmm. So for me, if you're talking about a guy who's an offensive attacking talent that needs the next step of development at a place that not only will invest in that development and pay it off big time with a huge sale and is good with Americans, that's why I like Dortmund as the best option.
Okay, and now I'm going to be a total hypocrite, and I'm going to come to our final question about all of this and ask you guys, what do you think he'll end up being sold for? Buzz?
I have Pepi's raw value at 15 million, but I think he will be sold for something like 11 or 12 million plus a sell-on percentage. So depending on the percentage of the sell-on, depending on the currency transaction, what it'll be reported at, it will be an interesting question. But that's in the neighborhood of 11 to 12 million with a 35-40% sell-on is my anticipation.
Okay, Dan, you got a guess?
Yeah, let me give me 1 second. I forgot the number. I think they're just going to go and try and beat Alphonso Davies' fee, which, oh no, that was 14, nearly 15 million. They ain't doing that for love nor money. Okay, I'm going to say 10 and a they'll try and plug for the 40%, which they ain't going to get. But I love the idea of Dortmund, except for one thing. They have Yusufa Mukoko ready to take over from Haaland. He's 16. He's already better than Pepi. That's a problem.
Well, sure, that is a problem, but their track record of development is the main reason why listen, if Dortmund wanted to come by him, it would be for a reason, and that reason would be because they think they can develop him and turn him and flip him. Because you're not talking about $5. You're talking about something like 10 to 20, depending on whose hype you're buying into. So you don't throw down that kind of money. So if Dortmund is legitimately offering that, then there's a reason.
I just hate to see that scenario that Brian Reynolds has landed in, where it was like, oh yeah, they got the Brazilian right back, and he's going to retire. They got Rick Karsdorp back off a loan, and and he's keeping Reynolds out of the team, minus a couple of minutes here and there.
You could not have possibly, you could not have possibly scripted a worse coach change for Brian Reynolds than the one that happened.
Even without that, just the fact that they thought Karsdorp was gone. They thought they were selling him. He was already on loan, and then he came back, and he's, now pushing for the Dutch team and everything.
These are good examples, by the way, of what I mean by the right place is so important, because the Reynolds situation has gone the wrong way. Let's look at Reggie. Yeah. Remember when Reggie went to Boa, the idea, not written in paper, was that he was going to then jump to Lille, right? Well, that dude that was trying to buy Boa turned around and sold Lille. So that whole thing, that whole laid out path that he had been promised, vanished and vaporized. So there's so many times people will promise you this and the pathway is that, and we're going to do this and do the other thing. Man, you better believe absolutely that truth is on the money. And sometimes that's where I think you have to default a little bit to the history of organizations and why you look at of the examples that are in front of Pepi. You look at things like the Ajax offer or interest at least, or the Dortmund interest at least, or Wolfsburg, who also has got a decent track record of playing young, up and coming players. Or like, for example, if Hoffenheim were to call, another club that produces and plays people through, as opposed to your Liverpool or your Inter Milan or those kind of situations, you're like, what is their track record that makes you think that that's a good idea, regardless of what promises they make with their, like Roma, with their new American owner who's buddy with the Hunts. That guy's promising the world. Why? Well, you changed coaches on your butt when you weren't expecting it. So, these things matter.
They completely matter, and the soccer world is littered with Americans that have made really, what seemed to me rash choices to make a move overseas, and it ended up. Breck Shea's choice to go to Stoke was. We all knew that was the dumbest thing in the world to do at the time, and it absolutely panned out that way. And I feel like we all looked at each other and went, "Is Portugal and Boa Vista really the right place for Reggie?" And it's turned out to be an awful place for Reggie. So
it was only good for Reggie if the Lille thing was real, and then that turned out to evaporate. So what can you do?
Well, I'm also going to continue to ask the question about Tanner Tessman and Venezia. Did he make the right choice to go there? Somebody put out a list of Americans playing overseas and the amount of minutes, and the two at the very bottom of the list with 0 minutes are Brian Reynolds and Tanner Tessman, and all I can think of is, man, they could be getting killer minutes in Dallas in Major League Soccer if they had just stayed. I know that isn't the right thing, but are they in a better situation? Or either one of those guys literally in a better situation today than they would have been if they had stayed in Dallas or chosen a better club, right? I guess that's the question.
Well, I don't know. I could certainly think of scenarios that would have been better for both of them potentially, but it's hard. It's easy to say in hindsight. I've checked in with both of those connections, and I know that Brian's group is pretty happy with where he is in the sense of his learning to play defense and learning from a great defensive coach. Yeah. And so they're not real worried given how young he is still. And I know from Tanner's camp as well that he's also really happy with the level of training and the competition he's in. Apparently, he's like going head to head with like one other person basically, and that guy's a much more veteran player. And so, it's things like he's learning a lot, where he's feeling really positive. They're saying really great things to him. So, they've both been in those situations for such a short period of time that it hasn't really soured yet. Is it optimum? I don't know, but it's better than where Thomas is, where Thomas, for whatever reason, can't barely get into reserve games. So we'll see.
All right, and now I'm also going to call myself a liar because I promised that was going to be the last question, but I am going to bring up one other thing about Ricardo, and I was kind of asking this question on Twitter earlier this week, which was, is there a price that Dan and Clark could put in front of Ricardo in terms of salary that would incentivize him to stay here in Dallas? Now, set aside why the Hunts would do that first. I'm just asking the general question. Is there a number? Is it $1.5 million, $2 million a year that suddenly they go, oh, maybe we should stay here?
Yeah, there's always a number for everything. What that number would be is totally relative to how much money is actually on the table for Pepi. And I don't know the answer to that because he has agreed personal terms with Wolfsburg, right? So there is a real number out there that I don't know. So you have to take that number and then multiply it by something. But sure, let's say that Wolfsburg's offering $3 million. Would $10 million get Pepi to stay?
Oh,
I would imagine.
Are you saying $3 million a year?
Yeah, sorry, a salary. I'm just pulling a number out of air. I have no idea what they're offering Pepi to play. I only said $3 million because that's what we heard Mauro Diaz was making it when he went to UAB. Remember? I think that's where he went.
Yeah.
So I just randomly said $3 million. I have no idea. Well, let's say it's $3 million a year for Pepi that they're offering him personally to play. I don't know, but let's say. Then if you triple that, If you give him 10, would he stay?
Okay, well that's not realistic though, Buzz. I think
No,
if you're
I know.
talking about real numbers, I think the reality that Pepi will get $1 million, €1 million a year is probably a more realistic number, which then translates into an honest discussion about what other top salaried strikers in MLS are getting. And that's where I was tweeting out those numbers about everybody above him in the scoring chart currently averages 1.7 a year in salary. And if you take Chicharito as the high and Kamara as low, ironically the number one goal scorer in MLS currently, who is the low, that number drops to 1.3. So if you really wanted to get a hair up your butt and you really wanted Ricardo to stay and you offered him a legitimate number of $2 million American dollars in tax-free Texas a year, would that incentivize him to stay here?
No, not in my opinion. Not 2 million.
Not if the best offer he has is €1 million
Yeah.
minus taxes and everything else he's got to deal with.
Yeah, because right now it's not necessarily totally about the money. It's about at this first one. It's about the right move, because the right move, the next one you're getting paid 10 million a year. You know what I mean? So you gotta make that calculation in your head. Yes, he wants to probably help his family and all that stuff, but he's already making 275 here, which is plenty enough to already help your family. If he's getting an offer of $1 million and plus they take out the taxes or whatever, take home a 500K, that's plenty enough to help your family. You have to make the right. So like staying here for like 2 million or even 3 million does you no good in terms of your career progression. You want the one that's the right opportunity so that the next one is huge. The contract you sign at 24 or 25, that's the one that you want to maximize for your biggest impact to carry you through the prime of your career. That's the goal, is to maximize that contract, not this one.
All right, so Dan, I'm going to ask you this part of the question, which is, should the Hunts put out any sort of public good faith offer to Ricardo that does try to get him to stay, just to make the fans feel like they at least tried to put the team first, not the bank account first? Or is that just all a waste of time?
I think that's a waste of time, and then it's a confusing message as to the 5-year contract, because then it just says this was just to get the fee up. It wasn't to actually, create any chance where Pepi stays.
Well, I think the contract that he signed at the time was commensurate with his performance levels so far. I mean, we all have to agree that his rocket to stardom is something that kind of essentially happened post-signing the contract. I mean, but nothing's keeping them from signing him to a new deal now based on his performance so far.
It just seems a really strange thing to do, to be like, hey, we signed a contract a few weeks ago where the ink's barely dry, and we're going to just rip it up now. It's it just smacks of desperation.
It doesn't happen in American sports, though. That's something Americans were used to.
Yeah.
That idea of like a guy signs a 10 million, like a baseball or whatever, when a guy signs a new contract and then that season proceeds to hit 60 home runs. Well, you're tearing up that first contract and giving him a new one, for $200 million or whatever. I mean, that's a pretty standard thing we're used to here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not even talking restructuring contracts. I'm just talking about a guy signs a deal and a year later he's MVP. It's like he ain't coming into camp until you get that new deal going. You can even look at Zeke signing early for just as an example, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, I just have this weird feeling. I just have this question running around in my head about the perception that the Hunts only care about selling players to line their pockets, and for all the talk of prioritizing winning championships, for a club that has not had a number 9 that they could actually point at and go, that guy's legit, for almost what feels like a decade now that you got one, oh, and by the way, he's a homegrown, there just seems to feel like maybe there should be some effort to try to keep him long term, even if that's not realistic, even if it's almost performative in some ways. I don't know. I guess part of it I keep thinking about.
Also depends on what the structure of the contract's like. You can kind of like deduce from the figures they gave. There was like a $350,000 signing on fee. There was, if they have like a massive escalation into year 2, 3, 4, then maybe that is kind of their effort to, to keep in him with a contract that he signed a week shy of 3 months ago.
Yeah, see, I think, Dan, this is a different kind of change in deal, which is, holy crap, he's even better than the contract we just signed, and everybody else wants him, and we really would like to keep him, or at least kind of show off to the fans we'd like to keep him. So let's offer him a contract commiserate to other people that are top scorers in the league, because he's not on it now, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
He's not even close to average for anybody close to him in the standings in terms of goal scoring.
Well, one thing I
I
wanted
think
to say
there's
is,
one guy that's like a goal behind him that's like on 70 grand more than him. But other than that, yeah, everyone is way over.
Yeah, I mean, the guy that's in number one, I think, is at 420, is the closest to him that has got more goals than him this season.
Mm-hmm.
He was a like a $2-3 million player a few years ago. He's just old now.
Yeah, Kamara, yeah.
well, one thing we definitely should say is that I don't think that the Hunts sell these players and line their pockets. They really do put the money and leave it in the team. As far as all evidence we have is the case. So that's
kind of a problem. Nothing they could do can dispel that, because that's just something in fans' minds until they, even the whole thing of, well, where's my check? I don't see it going anywhere else. And it's like, well, you do, because you see the academy, you see players coming through, you see a team that makes a loss, you see a team that has to spend, I don't even know if they get that super great discount to produce the televised games anymore. The team that's spending $100,000 a year on their rights, their streaming rights, and all this other stuff. Like, we know they're spending a good amount of money.
That's the thing. Everybody we know in this business that knows all the pieces and knows how the money all works. We all talk about FC Dallas. At very best, might be possibly breaking even and probably is losing money. So the money, when they sell these players, doesn't go in the Hunt's pocket. It keeps the team functional. Some of it may go to pay Frank O'Hara's $3 million a year over 3 seasons for $9 million. It's like, just because they don't spend a bunch of money buying a player doesn't mean that they took the money out of the team. It's all still in the team. So, and the other part of the problem with, can you pay Pepi more money? You do have a salary structure here, and the Hunts base a lot of that on age and position. And so they're not going to pay a striker $3, $4, $5 million who's 18 years old, because the next 18-year-old wants $5 million. So that's just not going to happen.
So I was doing this LAFC podcast over the weekend, and
whoa, wait a second! You got invited on somebody else's podcast?
Yeah, apparently Buzz suggested me.
Yeah, I wasn't available.
Oh, thanks, Buzz.
Sorry.
So I was talking to the guy, and he was talking about like their salary, their business model, which is like, they might buy a guy for $1 million and loan him to sell. I mean, they've had a couple of. They've had quite a bit of turnover over the last year. I was thinking, like, the business model at FC Dallas is really similar. Where LAFC may spend $1 million on a guy and then hope to flip him for, $8 million, FC Dallas may put in, $500,000 into a young player's development and hope to get a couple of million back. I mean, it's on a different scale, because your volume is greater, but your amounts within each of those is a lot less, but it's still the same sort of thing. You are throwing money at people hoping you're going to make money back on them. And it's just, for every Paxton Pomykal or Ricardo Pepi, they don't see like the I'm trying to think of a good example, but I can't now. Like your Daniel Evanses and Judson Burns, and guys like that who don't reach the professional career.
All right, well, we'll continue to watch the saga of Ricardo Pepi play out over the course of the next few weeks. Speaking of which, we probably should clarify right up front, because I think a lot of people spun this story in the wrong direction and started pointing at, oh, he's gone, he's never going to play for the club again, as to why Ricardo was not in the starting 11 yesterday against LAFC.
Got a boo-boo in his foot.
You said that in such a weird English way, I'm not sure everybody understood what you said, Dan.
Playing against Costa Rica, he suffered a foot contusion, which I guess the bruising was bad enough that it broke the skin and required a stitch. He missed a couple of days of training. They thought he was potentially likely to play, but evidently they erred on the side of caution.
Okay. So for all the conspiracy theorists, you're going to have to put your tinfoil hat away when he shows up against L.A. This weekend. All right.
Yeah, him scoring goals right now raises his value.
Yeah.
Him hiding away does not.
He's not going to help anybody's cause at this particular. I don't want to talk about this game because I thought this game was a microcosm of the season in many ways, Buzz.
No, the season wasn't that entertaining.
Okay.
That was an entertaining game.
Okay. Well, I guess that depends on your point of view. But LAFC does come back to win the game 3-2 over the good guys. Buzz, why don't you walk us through this one?
Well, first off, let me say that Hadir Obrian had a fantastic game. He was so good that, and after 25 minutes, LAFC had to make 2 subs to fix the problem.
Okay, wait a second. I heard you
yeah.
say this in your instant reaction.
Yeah.
You are suggesting that Hadir Obrian, the source of most of our consternation of the 2021 season, was the singular reason Bob Bradley, of all people, had to fess up and make a change 25 minutes into the game?
Yeah, in my opinion, yes.
Really?
They started the game in a 3-man back line with wingbacks, and O'Brien was crushing that side of the field. And they effectively subbed in 2 players and switched to a back 4 to try and put a player over there to handle O'Brien. That's my opinion watching the game.
I've also got a bone to pick. You said it's unheard of. Luton did it on Tuesday. 27th minute, the same minute.
I said nearly unheard of. The point, like a single first half sub that's not an injury, is usually the coach saying, boy, I really screwed something up. A double sub? Oh, man, that means that you've completely boned it. Formation shift, tactics, personnel. That's a massive misplay that you have to do that because it's less so in a 5-sub league, but when it was 3, you never would have seen that. But still, you've burned almost half your subs 25 minutes into the game. That's crazy.
Yeah, did either of you also take note that neither one of those players looked bothered or upset, or at least didn't dare to look bothered or upset when they came off the field?
Yeah, Bob Bradley probably has a good
lockdown.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, O'Brien, even after that switch, was still very good. He got the assist on Harris game. I thought he was terrific the whole game. Now, listen, they eventually subbed him out for a defensive shift. That's fine. We know his limitations. Again, for me, always man of the match has context. But I thought he was the most dangerous attacking player. He managed to make Franco Jara look halfway decent by pulling the defense out of shape. Jara's movement was better. Franco Jara could have quit on this team once he lost out to Pepi after he had the bad PK and wasn't playing really. But he didn't. He came in, showed he's a pro, worked hard. His movement was a little better. O'Brien was causing them fits. Honestly, that combination was the thing that got Dallas 2 goals up. In the second half, it didn't hold up, but that O'Brien for me, man of the match. I thought it was terrific.
Yeah, your comments about Franco Jara, I think ring true. He was one of your comments in your instant reaction video, Buzz, and I was really impressed with how hard he worked. I mean, yes, there are very clear moments where he looks like an over 30 guy trying to play in an open division Sunday league. He's just too slow and he can't keep up when they're fighting for a ball. But when he is in a situation where speed is not the priority, I think he holds his own quite well. And I think you make an excellent point about the fact that he could have just quit on this team and pouted and put out a half-ass effort, but we didn't get that from him. So for a guy that we've shoveled a lot of shit on this podcast, deserve credit where it goes, and I thought yesterday was a good example of that.
Yeah, there's no question there's deficiencies in what he has left. There's no question that he's old and he's slow, but he continues, and I've said this all along, he continues to train really hard. He's a complete professional. He doesn't complain or droop his head or make demonstrative gestures in the game or in training. He doesn't act like a little petty fool. He continues to try and help, I think, Ricardo Pepi develop. I don't think there's any question that he's helped with the kid's development. And he comes in that game and he puts in a good shift. The guy hasn't played in a while, and they get 60 minutes out of him and a goal. and he put a lot of pressure on those center backs, and he bodied some guys up, and he helped play a little post-up kind of game, a thing that Pepi has gotten better at and still needs to get better at. So there's a teaching aspect there. Listen, the amount he's getting paid is a problem, right? Outside of that, you got to give the guy credit where it's due. We try and say things like they are and not bring too much emotion into it. And that's true with this case. The guy worked hard and put in a good shift, and you got to give him some respect to his professionalism there.
Yeah, I want to throw this out here because we talk about this a lot, and it bothers me when we say this. The fact that Franco Jara is making $3 million a year this year is not an excuse for them not spending more money on other players. There are plenty of MLS teams. There's plenty of TAM, GAM, ZAM, and PAM in the Hunt coffers for them to figure out how to have another $1 million player or two on this roster. So I agree he's overpaid, but that is not an excuse and should not be an excuse for the way this roster is constructed. Can we agree to that, I hope?
Oh, no, I would agree to that. When we talk about how much he's getting paid, we say that. And by the way, there was a signing bonus for him. His base salary is only like $2 million a year, but it averages out, right? The point is that we know how the Hunts do business, and we say how much he gets paid, not to excuse the fact that they don't. But we know that with that salary on the books, that salary's triple anybody they ever had previously. So, credit for going above what your previous spend was. Too bad you misfired and got a bust of a player, but that was a step forward. And there's no reason at all, other than their own hesitance and their budget mindedness, that they don't do it with other players. You could easily have 3 DPs getting paid well over $1 million if you wanted to, and they certainly can afford it on a personal level, but they don't do that. They choose to run this organization on a budget, on a balanced budget, right? Money's got to come in to go out. So, maybe the Pepi sell will actually get them to do some more players. We'll see.
So in the game, and related to the Jara thing, because Jara did put in a good shift, about the time, the 60th minute, when he took, I think I'm saying this right, was Jara part of the original substitution shift? Am I right about that, Dan?
He went off for Brian Acosta at 64th minute.
Okay, so at some point in the midst of all these substitutions that happened about that point of the game, and I think was it 1-1 or was it 2-2 at this point, or were they still up 2-1? I can't remember.
2-1.
All right. Yeah, because the 2 goals came like 3 minutes apart.
All right, so I clearly remember a moment of me looking at the TV and asking the television, "What is Marco doing?" Because I still because everything he did the exact opposite of what I think he intended to happen on the field, and they all appeared to be really, I don't want to cuss, stupid decisions on his part in terms of personnel. And I'm hoping one of you two can help sort out what in the world Marco Ferruzzi was trying to pull off.
Well, you probably had a limit on how long you thought Jara could go. And so you're trying to bring him off, and then your next best scoring option on the field at that point is Jesus. So you're moving him higher, and you're trying to bring in a person to fill Jesus's role. Now, the surprising part was, like, if you want a direct replacement for Jesus, that should have been Ricarte. He's the next person that's a 10-ish type player. We don't like him there, but that's the next best option in pure terms. Instead, they brought in Brian Acosta, who, for my money, being an 8, you're going to end up with like a double 8 kind of look. Now, you do remember that there are times in the past when they've used Acosta in that higher 10-ish, false 10, free 8 role that we like to call it, earlier in the year. So I think that was the plan, that Acosta, because I think Cervania stayed sort of deeper, and Acosta was supposed to be the free 8 type player, because I even saw him gesture Cervania, like, kind of stay home. So that's what I've come up with in terms of
traditional 10 almost. He was so high up.
Yeah, he was pretty high. I'm sure he was trying to play like Jesus does, that underneath sort of role. So I imagine that was the plan. I don't love that. I assume there's some effort to try and get Acosta back into the flow of the team and back into the because how slow he is to get back into the flow when he comes back. I imagine that's the plan. I don't, sometimes we're guessing
Okay.
with these
So,
things.
so I'm going to assume the next one is a guess too. What in the world was the decision to sub on Freddie Vargas, period, at all the end, much less then 5 minutes later insert him into the game as the striker? Question mark, exclamation point, and shifting Jesus off to the right. That just sent my brain into a tizzy.
Did the confusion on Jesus' face come across in the broadcast when he just got settled up front for
Yes.
8 minutes and then was
Yeah.
told to go over to his third position of the night?
You know what? If yes, I think there is a moment where that actually gets captured on camera. I need to go back and see if I can capture it and post it online because it's like what in the, he was so it was like a dog being confused by a funny sound kind of look on his face.
Yeah, so here's the answer on that. Vargas's loan will be ending at the end of the season. So you want to see him play with the first team and see what he has. That's why he came in. The reason he played at 9, Vargas has been playing with North Texas a fair bit of late, maybe 5 or 6 games, possibly he's had overall. You may come to your surprise that he's been playing as a 9 with that organization. So clearly, for some reason, there's an organizational decision that's been made to play him as a 9. That's what they've been doing with him. So there he is.
All right, the most obvious question to that answer then, Buzz, is how well does he play the position for a USL 1 team?
Pretty good, actually. He scored a couple of bangers.
Okay.
The problem with Vargas is the same problem with the first team as is with North Texas. It's the who do I compare him to? It's kind of like a little bit of a Mauro Diaz problem, except not. It's kind of the flip of Mauro Diaz. Vargas is only good for about 20, maybe 25 minutes of like full out play, and then the other, if you start him, and then the other 50, 60 minutes, he's kind of walking around a little bit. So if you score 3 or 4 goals, you can do that all day long. So that's kind of the problem with him. Still, like you'd like to say, there's a lot of talent, like pure ball talent, pure ability. Yeah, I see some. It's just that it comes so rarely, and so much of it is just kind of walking around waiting for the game to sort of find him. That's the big problem. But he has scored a couple of pretty good goals, for North Texas without then playing the rest of the 70 minutes.
Is Freddie Vargas the Venezuelan Eric Hasley?
Yes. Yes, he is. That's awesome. Yeah, good comparison. Yeah.
He's saying that he's enjoyed the Texas barbecue a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So, Dan,
Yeah, I'm not calling him fat, but yeah, he's a little, yeah.
He looked a little bit bigger than the last time I saw him.
Yeah,
I agree, yeah.
He's got moon face going on. Maybe it's the haircut, but he looks like he's got moon face to me. All right, Dan, you were, I think, in the press box. Was there, without naming names or getting anybody in trouble, was there equal amounts of confusion as to what Marco was doing in terms of subs in the press box amongst
But there was
the
only
media?
3 of us in the press box, so it wouldn't be hard to
Sweet
give that away.
baby, Jesus.
That's the way it's been all season.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of confusion going on. I think that there was a little bit of distraction because Hollins head threw the ball away and picked up the yellow card at the time, but then it settles down. You're like, hold on, well, we just got used to seeing Acosta up here. Now he's dropping back. Now
Yeah.
Jesus is going out wide. Yeah, it was just a mass confusion. I think that was about the time where Twitter just flooded with a series of comments of Marco looking like a guy who's about to be fired from a job he doesn't actually have, and things like that. So we were all kind of chuckling at different things at that moment as well.
I was wondering if you could fire an interim manager and hire an interim manager, but that probably
That's the
wouldn't
point.
serve
They're
any
limited.
Yeah, that probably doesn't serve any real purpose. All right, so Buzz, if I told you my general reaction to the game is the team overall in attack looks absolutely neutered, and there's no really any sort of consistent danger on the team, while the defensive part of the team clearly looks worse with Philippe in goal than it ever does with Jimmy Maurer, and the whole thing is a giant mess. Am I off base at all?
A little bit. The second half, I'm with you. I think the team definitely looks worse with Felipe in goal. But I do think there's some offensive capability there. I mean, when Pepe's in town, obviously, and playing, there's a big difference. But even with Franco Jara, if Franco Jara and Obrian can get you 2 goals, a little help from Ryan Hollingshead, I don't know that that's a horrible offensive display. If you can manage to not let the other guys score 3 goals in your home stadium, that should be a win. I mean, 2 goals at home should be a win. There should not be a loss. So right now, the questions for me are all about the defense, as they have been the whole back half of this season. Basically, it's all been about, for me, the defense has not been good enough.
I'm seeing 2 shots on goal the entire game, which are the 2 goals they scored.
Right. Well, if you score twice, does it matter how many shots you had?
Well, in terms of shot creation and all of that, yeah, I think it does a little bit. I mean, the expected goals ended up being 0.8 Dallas, 1.6 LAFC. So, yeah.
I mean, with Franco Jara in the game, you're not going to get a high shot volume. All right. Paxton, for whatever reason, is in cruise control. Right. He's not doing anything. And then Obrian is doing what he does, which is create a little bit of chaos with his pace, and they manage to capitalize on it. So, that's not, Jesus
that beautiful
is the mystery
pass from Savania, though, when Jara hit the crossbar.
That was a beautiful pass. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Paxton, because I had this weird epiphany last night that I felt really guilty of thinking. But I do have the sense, after watching poor Paxton over the course of the last several weeks, months, playing as a winger, that he's essentially now just been reduced into, quote, another worthless FC Dallas left winger.
I'm not going to call him worthless, but I am worried.
Well, let me call it. You know what I mean? Like, Dallas has a long line of people that have played that position that essentially have no effect on the game whatsoever, and somehow they've managed to take their greatest midfield prospect and turn him into another one of those.
Yeah, that's on the surface, absolutely, and I'm definitely worried. I mean, I hope it's just mental, and that like a refresh, a new coach, and a shift back into the middle will fix it all. But I'm also a little worried physically. Like, I don't see the little super burst that used to put him like half a yard ahead of guys. I don't see the little close down, the little nip the ball off close down is kind of missing. The desire to go at 2 or 3 guys at once and play some quick passing combos is missing. And so I worry about the physical side. I hope it's just mental.
He's still in that down year from the surgery. I mean, hopefully they've just kind of stuck him out there, like, just get through the year. Doesn't matter what you give us, just put starts together, get your fitness up. Next year's a new year. That's, and then hopefully the Paxton Pomacol returns.
Yeah, I hope you're right, Dan, but I do begin to wonder, after a full season of being played out of position and getting to a point where he's not even beating people anymore with the ball in one-on-one situations on any sort of... I mean, he's losing duels more often than he is winning duels, and I say that based on an eyeball test, not on looking at stats or anything. I'm worried that being stuck in that situation over the course of an entire season is really going to have a long-term effect on his career. I'm with Buzz. I'm very worried about Paxton Pomacol's future at this point.
Yeah, but for me, I think I'm hoping that it's just mental funk and he's just like resigned to the season, because I don't think that a season playing out of position will kill his innate mind, his innate soccer mind. I think it's all under there, because we've watched him play in different positions his whole career. So my worry is actually that it's physical, that he's lost that little bit of extra gait he had, that first step that he had.
All right.
That the wear and tear of his never say die 1,000% all the time mentality has worn him down at like 22, that he's already worn down and basically busted like he's 32.
And
that's what I'm afraid of.
And I agree with you, but I'm going to remind everybody, the last time Paxton Pomacol played center midfield for this team predates his time in the U17 World Cup. It's been that long. Yeah. Ever since he came back, pre, post, during injury, he has only played on this team essentially as a winger, not in his natural position. It's been that long, 2018 now, 2019, since
Yeah.
he literally last played in his natural position for this team. And those are some of the most important and informative, learned years of a guy's career, and he has lost them now through a various set of reasons, injury or coach's decision or otherwise, and that's why I am telling you, that's why I'm worried about him.
Yeah, as I say, I hope it's just mental, because if it's just mental, it's a fixable problem. If it's physical, it might not be. So I hope you're right. I hope that's all it is.
Okay. So let's move on to a couple of other homegrowns, which is the continued pairing and starting of Cerrillo and Cervenia, which is all part of a master plan we all giggled and joy about several years ago with all these guys playing together. Buzz, are Cerrillo and Cervenia legit as a duo in a midfield on an MLS team?
Yes. Right now, I take those two guys 9 out of 10 times over Facundo and Acosta as a pair. I do.
Okay.
I think Cerrillo is as good as Facundo already, and he's significantly younger. And I think that Cervenia right now is outplaying Acosta. He's not better than peak Acosta, but peak Acosta is so rare. And Cervenia is at this point in the season very reliable and steady. I would start those two guys every game the rest of the way.
You got any thoughts about that, Dan?
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sold. I think that yesterday was Edwin Cerrillo's best game in an FC Dallas jersey. He was the perfect 6 in my mind, which is the guy that you don't notice is there, but then you go and look at the stat sheet later on and he was everywhere. He led the game in touches, he led the game in passes. From both teams, the next closest was like 15 passes behind. He was the only player that hit a 90% passing clip, joint-led interceptions. Did have a game-high of fouls of 4. I think he joint-led. I think he might.
That's okay as a 6, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But he was. The ground he was covering was fantastic. He was letting Cervenia kind of dictate those wider parts of the central midfield, which we saw with that pass that set up the shot for the crossbar. It was everything I want to see. It was everything I want to see. I didn't see any major involvement or any major fault from either of them on the goals. It was a lot of backline stuff more than anything, but which we've seen a lot of defensive midfielders. I mean, I don't think they were at fault for any of the goals. I think it was all backline stuff.
Yeah, for me, the next phase of Cyril's progression, other than just experience, will be the ability to make a progressive dribble and then a progressive pass. That's a small step, and it's the next step. Because as you said, Dan, for me, I thought he was just phenomenal, and so was Cervenia the whole game.
So the funny thing is, Facu, as kind of much of a disappointment as he's been, that's kind of been his strength in those moments. Think back to that New England game where they had 5 chances and he set all 5 of them up with exactly that turn, that progressive pass, look for the pass out wide. Is there an option in front?
Yeah, I'm not as down on Facu as you have been, Buzz, but I also am at a point where I don't care about that. I want to see the kids grow and give them the opportunity to prove themselves. So, keep Edwin out there. Let him do his thing. I'd love to see this team actually grow its own real single pivot 6.
Yeah, that for me, I don't think Facundo's a terrible player. I just think he's an average player. And that position to me is so huge that it's such a pivotal position. We've talked about this all the time about the importance of that guy and that spot, and the great teams all have these guys. And I'm not a believer that Falco can go single pivot by himself. I think Edwin can with a little more progression. So I'm all in. It's not that I'm anti Facundo. I just think that the upside is to move forward with these kids you're developing from inside, because they're the ones that have come through for you every time. And the way to become not just average, but the way to become really, really good is to either buy a really Grezzo type player for that position or develop one yourself.
Yeah. All right, and I don't really, because it's been such a pile of hot, warm barf most of the season. The back line has been a real mess, and maybe in retrospect, going back to the beginning of the season, we all suddenly had the epiphany of, holy crap, this thing's changed a lot since last season. Much of this was probably predictable way back when. I do think, based on the comments that you guys have made in the last several weeks, a lot of this I do think has to be about Philippe and goal and his ability to communicate or lack thereof. But there seems to be other problems going on in the back line as well. I still am so confused about the Nkosi Tafari absence. It makes me wonder if Tafari has been reluctant to sign a new deal, so maybe they think he's gone, so they've just decided not to play him anymore. There's got to be more to that story than we just want our two veteran guys to play. There just has to be more to that.
Yeah, I worry about that too. I do think that the idea that they sent him back down to play for North Texas says something about where they consider him to be in his development, because it was him and Munjoma and Freddie Vargas and Khalil. It's all the bottom of the roster developmental guys that you're trying to make better with playing time. So like if you lump him into that section, for me, that feels weird because I think he's much further along than that. And some of the defensive problems you're talking about with the center backs, he's the only one that has recovery pace to me of the other three options. Hedges used to, but doesn't anymore because he's in his 30s now. Martinez and Bressan, neither one do. And Bressan's overly aggressive, and Martinez is probably overly not aggressive, is overly conservative. So you got some deficiencies there, all of which lead to why they lead the league in PKs given up, because they don't have guys with recovery pace in that spot. So they're jumping in on balls, they're diving in late, they're not closing guys down and getting blocks or getting fouls. So all of that is concerning, and it leads me to the idea that center back going forward is going to be a little of a problem spot that they're going to have to figure out what to do there, because most of those guys have deals. So, but that's a different podcast. It just does make me wonder why Nkosi is not playing. I agree with you that he should be playing.
Okay. And is it worth wasting any time talking about Philippe and why he's starting over Maurer and just how mediocre he really is as a talent?
I might just assume his loan deal's running up, and there's a $2.5 million buy, and they want to see him in first team and see if they think it's worth it to buy him. Because I'm sure that if they do, it'll be to sell him. I wanted to throw this out there because I haven't brought it up yet. I am now very convinced that they signed Richard Sanchez to a North Texas deal just because they were fairly confident that they wouldn't have Philippe long term. Right? Because why do you sign Richard Sanchez to a North Texas deal? The guy's way late in his career. North Texas is about developing kids and 20-year-olds. So there's a total disconnect about why they signed that guy.
You think they would have sold Philippe by now, but because he didn't make the Olympic squad, his value dropped, and now nobody wants him.
So they didn't buy him, so they couldn't sell him, and now nobody really wants him, and maybe the money's not there, or Zobac's at the end of his contract. I just think that more than ever, I look at Richard Sanchez, and I wondered, why the hell is that dude there? Well, now, a season later, now I understand. When I look at Felipe not paying off, and I look at Zobac being really old, I look at Maurer getting hurt more, it was an emergency cover move, for the chances that they're going to need another keeper among those three that are with FC Dallas now. There's a good chance that not all three are going to be here in 2022. And so you sign Richard Sanchez to that 1-year contract with the idea that you bump him along as your second or third for FC Dallas next year.
Dan, you want a dog pile on the D?
Seems slightly fair. Just decision making in that defense has become a real issue. The penalty kind of needless. It's a bad reaction on Raheem Edwards trying to flick the ball back over Hedges' head. Minor contact, but with VAR, any contact is a penalty, unfortunately. And then that third goal, so bizarre. Just the low cross coming across the area. Paxton takes a dive at it. Hedges takes a dive at it.
Philippe takes a dive.
Doesn't. You'd think even if he does, he's going to go down hands first and capture the ball, but instead he tries to stick a leg out. Then you've got Emma's weird attempt at a clearance falling straight to Arango. It's and that they definitely train a lot on those kind of critical thinking moments with like reaction balls and various dummies and stuff. But yeah, just there was a cluster.
Yeah. It's funny, that Arango guy, 11 goals in 13 games. He just joined LAFC a few weeks. And you could make this comparison against pretty much every other MLS team. This isn't just a Dallas thing, but if you just sit and take a look at and compare his numbers in 11 games versus the entirety of a season for Vargas, Obrian, any number of guys that Dallas has brought in, you can put all those guys together and they don't equal anywhere close to what this guy's done in 13 games. It's unbelievable.
So speaking of Hadir Obrian actually finished ahead of Arango in the Colombian scoring charts last year. They were separated by 3 goals, 1 place. That's why they weirdly swapped shirts at halftime.
At halftime?
Yep.
Yeah, you didn't see that? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they did. I thought it was
No,
wild.
I had recorded the game, so as soon as the whistle blew, I just hit fast forward a whole bunch of times and went to the beginning of the second half. So I
let's
missed
be
that.
honest, that should, he should add 4 because while it is the letter of the law that Latif Blessing was in the once one of the 21 players in the line of sight of Felipe on that.
Well, that was
they
because
ruled offside,
Blessing's...
he wasn't involved in.
Well,
any way.
no, I would disagree with you on that. He stepped to the ball as the ball was being played through. I thought that was a legit offside call, Dan.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought it was a bit soft.
You were
No,
having...
letter
you
of
were
the
eating
law, it's
cookies.
offside. I just think that's one of those, they've tinkered with the offside laws so much, just adding things for the sake of it.
All right, and to close out talk about that crappy loss last night, can somebody explain? I mean, because without question, I have enjoyed Major League Soccer's implementation of VAR, specifically as it relates to offside, better than any other league in the world. And it's not even close to question, but I do have to wonder how in the world they looked at that last night in the VAR room and went, "Oh yeah, that's close enough. He's on." They made the right call.
I bet the discussion probably went, I can see it's logically offside, I cannot see it's absolutely offside. Because there is there's 2 views you can see. He looks reasonably offside from the back. He looks like 4 yards offside. There's a sideline cam that isn't quite the right angle. It looks like Emma Tumasi's knee maybe could potentially just about keep him onside. And then you get into that whole thing of drawing lines and that. And if the photogrammery guy, whatever his name is, gets involved, great. I'd love to see that. I'd really be interested to see just how close it was. But I think if the linesman flagged, there's not enough to call it a goal. If the fact the linesman didn't flag or the ref didn't blow offside, there's not enough to overturn it that way either.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure that you can call back a goal if there was no offside called. I think that's one of those scenarios where, it's not like there was a handball missed. It's offside, so it's related sort of in a way to the passive offside. That's why they put up the flag if it's even remotely close to offside. You're supposed to put the flag up at the end, the passive offside thing, right? And then let VAR sort it out. But if you don't raise the flag, I don't think they can go back and look at that.
Yeah. We've all been watching these games long enough. All the people involved in VAR are professional soccer people. That is without question totally the wrong call that was made, and I was very disappointed that VAR did not correct the decision accordingly.
You can imagine the amount of frustration in that little VAR room, just with knowing that that you can't do a whole lot about it, because there's not a factual thing of saying I can see without any doubt that he was offside.
I would politely disagree with you, Dan, on that. I think it was very clear he was offside. They were maybe beholden to one very, very bad angle that, because of optical illusions, he does appear to be in the right position. But when you look at the one that's the closest to being the most accurate in line, he's clearly offside. And he was, and did anybody see that in real time and not look at the TV and go, okay, yeah, no, they've got that wrong?
No, I mean, I thought in real time that was offside, and the final pass was offside. The final pass
Yeah.
was
We haven't even
level,
gotten to the final pass. I'm talking about the initial pass.
Yeah, I mean, no one would say, "Oh, yeah, that was onside on the initial," in real time anyway.
I just wanted to bitch about it.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Okay. And then just real quick, guys, the salaries finally came out yesterday, I guess it was. I guess the big surprise out of this was how much money Facundo's making from the club. Was he at $840,000 or something ridiculous like that?
Yeah, that's DP territory. That's way overpaid. That guy shouldn't be a DP. No, listen, he's not a DP because they buy him down, but that number is way out of line for the level of player he is. There's no question.
Yeah. Any number that stuck out for you, Dan, that you want to comment on?
Not overly. Jimmy Mauer got his extension, which pushed him up to the $250,000. That's always good to see. And that Ricardo Pepi signing on fee looked pretty nice.
What did that say?
So because we get the list of the base salaries and then that guaranteed, which is like the annualized guaranteed bonuses. So it might be an agent's fee or a signing on fee for the most part. His worked out to be over the course of 5 years, $350,000 signing on bonus. So more than he gets in a year.
Nice. All right, Buzz. I'm sorry. Did I give you an opportunity to make any particular comment or bring up any sort of salary you wanted to talk about?
I'm looking really quick. I think Obrian on 360 is relatively speaking about where he should be for his signing. Shwalk Shun, his number leads me to believe that he's one of these young initiative under 22 thing or whatever that program is, because that number is pretty high for a kid.
What's he on?
It's on. Is it 360? I was just looking at it. Yeah, 300 with a 340 bonus. So that's pretty high for a kid his age. I mean, I know he's played for his national team, but that's a bit up there. I mean, Ricarte, who's a late in his career pro MVP candidate back home, whatever, is on 450. So for a kid Shun's age to be close to that, like that's 100K more than Brandon Cervania. That's 200K more than Dante Seeley. That's a pretty good number for a kid. So that leads me to think that he's part of that program.
Okay. What are we looking for on Saturday out in L.A. against the other L.A. team, the Galaxy, Buzz?
Well, the only thing we really should be worried about is Pepi. Can Pepi play? Obviously, you would want to play him as much as possible to elevate his shop window value. He's chasing a chance to get some FC Dallas records, chasing a chance to be the all-time teenage leading scorer in Major League Soccer. You want to give him shots at that. For anyone that was worried that they're faking this injury to not play him, I mean, you can get in trouble for misreporting false information, number one. And number two, if they have something like that, they just don't say. They just say he's out for personal or undisclosed. They did that with Mauro Diaz. Remember, they just sat him. So there's no problem at all with just sitting a guy if you're really about to sell him. So that's not any reason to fake an injury. Well,
they can't sell him. He can't go anywhere until January. Yeah, they can't go anywhere till January anyway. So what point would that? Like, he's not going to.
There would be no
him.
point.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine
it's also weird that they showed him as part of the travel party to LA today. So sitting him and flying him out would make no sense.
That's the big question. I'm assuming he's going to play. Because if they're traveling, he can probably go. And then what else is going to change? We just talked about Cerrillo and Cervania being. For me, better than the other two guys. They did not play last weekend, so there's no real need to rotate necessarily. Both those guys I would expect to go again, with the possible exception of, especially because Facundo was on the injured list. So Acosta maybe for Cervania, but the way Cervania's playing, I would not make that change. Paxton will be in there because for whatever reason, Shun's not a starter. I don't understand. O'Brien had a great game. He'll keep his spot. Ima Tomasi's a no-brainer. Hollings is a no-brainer. Center back is the problem. Hedges is a lock. You got to go up against Chicharito, so my money might be on a Brisson return, possibly to let him bang on Chicharito a little bit and see if you can limit that guy because his movement is really good. And then the question is in goal. Now, Felipe last time had the 7 saves, had the great game. So, yeah, put him in again. I get that. So, we're going to find out because he did not have a good game this time. We're going to find out if it really is a shop window. What do we have, Felipe? Or are they going to go back to Maurer, who it should be, in goal? So, that's kind of where I see it. I don't think we'll see Nkosi start for whatever reason. Why he doesn't start, why Shun doesn't start are the two that I don't understand. I think both those guys have earned starting spots and they're not getting them. So, it's weird.
All right. Anything else that we want to cover in this particular episode, guys?
Yeah, we need to talk about Ezra Henderson for sure.
Oh, no. Okay.
Ezra Hendrickson has said he has an interview with FC Dallas for the head coaching job. So we have to talk about that really quickly. He played for FC Dallas after the Hunts had taken over the team. You remember that was 2003. He played for the Hunts in Columbus, where he went after he left FC Dallas. He started his coaching career under Siggy, I believe, in Seattle. He's coached Seattle 2. He's coached under Bruce Arena. Right now, he's working for Caleb Porter. So there's plenty of resumes to like there. If you're into, he's been a big locker room leader kind of guy for a long team. So some leadership qualities there. So lots of luck on that resume. It's just the first guy who officially we know 100% is interviewing for the job. So it's worth discussing at least that option is a possibility.
He's low on the odds chart in Vegas, though, right?
I mean, I don't look at odds, so I have no idea.
No,
But-
that's a made up thing. I'm just in your mind, he's not a front runner for the gig.
I don't know why not. I mean, he fits the qualities that we talk about for a coach. He fits the idea of working under other people to have learned some things that they talked about wanting more experience at this level, wanting some winning at this level. Well, that's certainly Siggy and Bruce Arena, the work he's done there. Caleb, they just won an MLS Cup under Caleb. He's worked for the Hunts, played for the Hunts. So he's inside that family, if you will. We talked about how Zanato likes to give guys their first job at that level. He fits that description. So the reason why he's important to talk about him is there's a whole lot of boxes you can tick that fit what we think they're looking for in this position. So he's a legit candidate. Yeah.
All right. Dan, anything else from you, sir?
Yeah, 2 things. A couple things after the game. The weird little fracas towards the tunnel. Raheem Edwards goading some fans on. Then the unlikely hero, Franco Jara, is the one to go off on him. Jesus said after the game that Hara heard all the stuff about reminding the fans of the scoreline. He's like, just not having that. They'll fight for the fans, and they're not having that here. Hopefully, the fines that come from it aren't too big. I mean, all 22 players and the coaches were involved. There was a water bottle thrown from the Hall of Fame section. I think Felipe aimed a kick at someone. Raheem Edwards grabbed Ryan Hollins' head by the throat, or by at least the neck of his jersey. So the MLS security guy was still out on the field, kind of just like observing the area, even after we did the press conference last night.
One thing I want to say about that is that, details aside, of which I don't really care much about, I do like the fact that despite the fact that this has been a horrific season, that there are guys in this team that still care about this team and its fans and have some heart and have some pride and got pissed about stuff. So thumbs up for that.
Especially, seconds after you've just been officially eliminated from the playoffs, which you knew weeks ago was going to happen. But now you're like, there's nothing to play for. Maybe, for some, that's effectively the end of their time at FC Dallas. And they're still like, no, I'm going to, like you say, they're going to go for their fans. They're going to go for their teammates.
Yeah, love it.
And the other thing I had, Jesus again, second game in a row, he had some comments about officiating. The players weren't happy. Jesus voiced some disappointment in the way officials treat FC Dallas compared to other clubs. Not sure how valid or invalid those comments are, but again, it's kind of that fire that they're getting their nose bent out of joint, that I don't think that that they think they've got a point to prove coming into next season potentially.
Should we mention that Lucci talked to U.S. Soccer about the U20 job?
Absolutely.
That's been reported. I guess he turned it down, but it just goes to show people are interested in Lucci. So,
why would he turn that job down?
He wants to prove he can be a first team head coach.
All right. And
Doug Robertson's recap also linked him with some jobs in Mexico potentially.
God, I'd love to see that.
Okay, wait a second. if you're a fan of a top flight club in the United States, or if you are a fan of an MLS team or a Liga MX team, and they announce Lucci Gonzalez as your new head coach, you're pissed to high heaven, right?
There's a lot of MLS fans that are like desperate to get Lucci in just because they've seen kind of a
Did they
a
not
nice,
pay attention to the last 3 seasons of this club? How the team got worse under him?
Well, I mean, they're probably looking at different things. They're looking at bringing young players in who make great headway and then go off and make some money. They're looking at a pretty attractive style of football.
Damn.
Have they seen this season? Probably not. But if you're a Cincinnati or a Chicago, is Lucci Gonzalez somehow aiming down?
In a world filled with people with bigger resumes and professional experience, yeah. I think that if I'm a Major League Soccer team, one of 30 or 29 positions available on the globe, the world is filled with better options than Lucci Gonzalez. All due respect to him, the guy needs to find his level and stay there for a while and then look for the opportunity. He missed his chance, right? He worked his way, he talked himself into the chance, and he blew it. And so now he needs to be in the right place, and another team shouldn't burden their club with a guy still trying to figure it out.
Well, if they think he can figure it out and be set up for success, not kind of handicapped by Andre and Dan, then you've got every right to offer him to at least see if it will work.
From the outside, I can see a scenario where you can look at that team and say, he worked for a team that is crap at international scouting, that spends no money, and he had to do it with a bunch of 18-year-olds, and he got the team into the playoffs 2 out of 3 years he was head coach.
And the fact that the team's got worse in the 4 games since has kind of been like, oh, maybe he was actually coaching them above.
I guess my point is that we all witness individual decision-making, tactical questions, the way that he communicated with his team, the tune-out, all of the other things that are fundamental to how he coaches teams that are representative of him still being very young in this type of role, which would tell me that if I'm a fan of another club in a top flight, I don't think he's my guy. Now, again, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm shocked to hear that people would actually consider him for a head coaching gig at MLS level, or especially Liga MX level.
Well, the only thing I think you're wrong about is that I think that 99% of fans don't watch other teams at all, or to any level that they could actually tell you one thing Lucci did that was a mistake. All they see is the macro level, no money, crap scouting, whole bunch of kids. He got them in the playoffs twice, right? So I mean, I don't disagree with everything you said about why. Like, me personally, I understand why he was fired. Mistakes. He was making mistakes in terms of subs, and there's tactical decisions. He was over coaching and overdoing that. All these reasons why he got fired. Totally understandable. Totally agree. That doesn't mean that most fans are going to know that. Most fans will not know that.
Yeah, just to back that up, I mean, the replies to Doug McIntyre's story. Hire Lucci at Brian McBride and Cindy Cohn. Please, for the love of God, sign Lucci. He's a great developer, a young talent. He's the guy.
For the U20 gig, yeah.
Effing do it. Please, Chicago soccer gods, give us this.
Yeah, and related to the U20 team, I think he's perfect for the U20 gig.
No, I agree. That's the ideal job. But there's tons of people from like Chicago, Cincinnati, those other clubs that have been abjectly worse than FC Dallas that are like, hey, we have money, we have the ability to actually buy players, we think we could give this guy a platform.
Well, when you said Chicago, I was thinking U.S. Soccer's based in Chicago. But if somebody from the Fire wants Lucci as their coach, or Cincinnati for that matter, and considering that Cincinnati has hired guys with names, I guess they're just like, whatever, maybe we should try something different. So I guess more power to them. All right, whatever. Sorry, Lucci, I didn't mean to offend you. I just, it's just, being honest.
He ain't listening to this.
Yeah,
It's all right. Buzz will talk it over at lunch with him.
that's true. That's right. When they go to Rudy's or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't forget, kids, Third Degree, the podcast is brought to you by Soccer 90. You guys repeat after me. Soccer 90 is your source for all your FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club gear. At this moment, they have the limited edition Pepi El Tren scarves right in time as the cold weather heads this way. They're in stock now, so get online and get one. And when you do that, don't forget, with all the other crap that you bought, you get 25% off your purchase because you're a Third Degree listener. Use the code Third Degree at checkout at soccer90.com. Well, Dan, I hope you have a nice, clear view on a full moon night from your posh penthouse apartment in downtown Richardson.
I don't know, the blinds are shut, but thank you anyway.
All right, well, get out of your beanbag chair and open the blinds and check out the beautiful fall evening we're all having here.
It's actually a Shaquille O'Neal
Maybe
Office Max office.
Maybe you should walk out onto your your patio with your fire pit that you have out there in your posh apartment, penthouse that
we're
you live
not
in.
allowed fire pits on the balcony.
Buzz, well, for whatever reason you are in El Paso, the Pepi pilgrimage or otherwise, I hope you have a good, safe trip, my friend.
Thanks. I get to go change the flat tire on my truck now.
Can I ever commiserate with you? And I'm sorry I'm not close enough to come rescue you as you and your wife were, Andy and I, so many months ago. We've still not told that story on the air. We've got to do that at some point.
Sure. Thank you. I will.
All right. Thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. We'll speak to you next week after a game or something, and we'll talk more about Pepi and something on another edition of Third Degree, the podcast. Pepi Pilgrim.
The Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.